Welcome to Story Time with Chris James. Sorry about that little bit of a delay. I got super busy yesterday, I will start reading right where I left off last week. Pam managed to get them to the airport without A, hitting anyone, B, getting arrested, or C, picking up any hitchhikers. Everything was going according to plan until she had to stop at the gate. The gate guard looked at Pam sitting way down behind the steering wheel. "And just where do you think you're going, little girl?" Looking at this pickup, he had a sneaking suspicion he'd been through this before, as in just 2 weeks ago. Belle jumped in with, "Oh, she really is 17. Her folks lived next to a nuclear power plant when she was born, and this is the result." She pointed one finger at Pam. Belle thought hard about how to get past this city official. "She knows Mr. Armstrong." The guard looked at Belle and then the pickup. His eyes were everywhere except where Pam was sitting. Uh, er, uh, Go ahead. Stay between the white lines. Don't pick up any hitchhikers. Go ahead." He pushed the button that would open the gate. As the pickup drove away, the guard wondered if he should look into some other career. Pam drove over to where, just last week, she had driven to meet with the bag gang. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago, but still not that long ago. The old hangar was still empty. One wall was missing where the alien spacecraft had set. Al was standing next to the hole where the door used to be. The door Hortense had kicked clean off its hinges. He stepped over as Pam pulled up, opened the back door, and got in. "Hey, thanks for picking me up. I hope Paula wasn't too upset I missed dinner last night." He looked over the top of the front seat, trying to see his daughter. Pam stuck her head between the seats. She didn't really notice. Things are a bit weird at home." Al looked at the little girl with braids sitting in his daughter's truck. He looked at the witch sitting next to her. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words would form in his head. It took a few seconds before he began to laugh. "Is this some kind of a joke? Belle, did you get your driver's license after all?" Belle jumped in with, "Maybe you should drive. There's something you need to hear from her." She pointed one finger at Pam. Three doors were opened and three people swapped places. Belle moved to the back seat. Pam ran around, hugged her dad, and before getting into the passenger seat. Al walked to the driver's door but was hesitant to get in. Come on, this is some kind of a joke, right?" He looked at Belle and then the little girl. Pam got busy trying to explain what she meant by things being weird at home. As Al was absorbing all the things this little kid had to say, some kind of an advanced looking cell phone began to ring. It sounded like a Dalek saying, "Exterminate," over and over. Pam answered. "Pam, did it work? Is Belle there? And is your mom okay?" She listened a bit. "You might have to pick up your dad at the airport. Have Belle tell the guard you look like a little kid because you lived near a nuclear power plant. Oh, and tell him you know Mr. Armstrong." Pam looked at her dad, looking back at her. "I guess I'd better explain a few things." Paula was standing in the kitchen. She had put things away and closed drawers, and for unknown reasons, the racks to the stove were on the floor. Dinner was on the stove when she heard the front door open. Al had a lost look on his face. All of that in just 5 hours? Give or take a few minutes? Pam quickly explained to her father it had been 24 hours, not 5. Al was now thinking he may have invented a TARDIS. I traveled in time and space? Pam's cell phone rang. It was Sarah. "What you doing? I was hoping you were about to start some adventure or something." Pam had no idea what to tell her minion. I'm not really up to my usual self." "Oh, can I come over? Maybe I can make you feel better." "It's just that, well, Mom isn't all together either." Pam looked at her mother as she was putting the plates on the table upside down. "Well, let me know if you're about to have a paranormal adventure or anything." Sarah sounded as if she were being left out of something. At the dinner table, Al had his newspaper, but it was folded in his hands. Paula was sitting across from him, still looking a bit lost. Belle had tried to leave, only to realize that she needed a ride back to the office, and Al had said only after she'd had dinner with them. Pam was sitting in her chair. The table felt way too high, so she was sitting on several large books that were on top of her chair, as she was trying to answer everyone's questions. Well, Belle didn't have any questions. Once Pam had said what she could, Al leaned back and cleared his throat. "Well, it sounds as if we have a dilemma on our hands." He tried to come up with some answers. "We need to get Pam back to her original size and age. But how?" Belle had stayed out of the family discussion, but felt she needed to say something. "I think it's something to do with that chair. Maybe Mrs. Bogus could sit in it again and somehow regrow Pam." Al looked at the rocking chair sitting outside the patio door, next to the barbecue pit that he was still building. Paula had drug it outside so its nasty magic couldn't affect her any more. He looked over at Pam, who looked like she wanted to shrink some more. He looked at his wife, who was finally mostly back to normal. He looked at Belle. "I'm afraid you may be right. You have any ideas how we can make it work?" Belle got to thinking about the question. "Your wife, Mrs. Bogus, was sitting in that chair looking at a photo of Pam back when she was 10 years old. The chair turned Pam into an exact match of what Mrs. Bogus was looking at. Maybe she could do it again, only this time with a photo of what Pam looks like today." Paula was feeling left out, being talked about by her husband and Belle. "I guess I was kind of thinking about how I wish Pam wasn't about to become an adult." She tried to not look at Pam. "Do you have a current photo of her?" Belle just kind of asked of the table. Pam chimed in. "I have a photo taken while we were looking for ghosts at Dr. Nasher's clinic 2 weeks ago." She opened her image app and began searching for the photo. "Here it is." She showed Belle and then her father and then her mother the image of her and Sarah standing together in the hallway. Sarah was standing right in front of her, and Pam had her head right next to her minion, resting on her shoulder, smiling as if the world was theirs. Barbara had taken the photo just before they found the crazy ghosts having a party in the staff lounge. No one said what they were all thinking. Finally, Paula took Pam's cell phone and walked to the back door. "I hope this works. I can think of a lot of ways this might go wrong." Al started to say something, but he had no idea what. Pam felt like crying again, as if her mother might not come back this time. Belle wished she'd stayed in her lair. Paula sat in the rocking chair and then looked long and hard at the photo of her one and only kid. Maybe you should move the image around so that Sarah isn't in it. Belle thought maybe this could be a bad thing. You know, Siamese twins or something. Oh, that would be very bad. Paula used her fingers to enlarge the image and move Sarah off to the side. Okay, here goes everything. She focused on the image of Pam and thought how much she wanted her back the way she was just last week. As Paula sat there remembering how tired Pam had been after staying awake all weekend battling the aliens who had stolen all the cheese and spices, so she tried thinking of Pam as being the way she'd been the week before that. Now what? Pam was feeling like a grumpy, tired little girl. Belle was doing way too much thinking. What were you doing when your mom was sitting in the chair? I went to bed. Maybe you should go to. No, I want to stay here with Mom. Pam knew she was acting like a child, but she couldn't help it. Al didn't want to say it, but he did anyway. Go to bed, young lady, and get some sleep, or at least pretend to. As Pam was trying her best to not do as she was told, Al pulled Belle over to the side. Would you mind keeping an eye on Pam? I would do it myself, but I think I should keep an eye on Paula. I'm not some kind of a baby. Oh, sorry. I forget when to be a witch and when to be her friend. She took Pam by the hand. Come with me, and I will tell you a story about a beautiful young witch that ate Hansel and Gretel. Pam's room was a mess. The bed hadn't been made, and there were clothes everywhere. Pam had pulled things out, trying to find something that fit, not bothering to put anything away. She didn't want to go to bed. Belle aimed one finger at the mess of sheets and pillows. Get to bed, or I'll turn you into a. Oh, never mind. Get in there and sleep. Pam crawled into bed, but did her best to stay awake. This lasted all of 2 minutes. Belle found a chair in the corner and sat. She wished she had brought a book to read besides her book of magic, which was still downstairs. She looked around the room at the mess, which was getting on her nerves. Belle started putting things away. Not where they belonged, just out of sight. She was straightening out the things on the dresser when what looked like a blue tentacle came in under the door. It was mostly see-through, almost like a smoke or a mist. The tentacle moved over to where Pam was laying. They vanished under the covers. Belle felt way wrong about doing it, but she had to know. She flipped the covers back. Pam was laying there, looking like a 17-year-old again. Hey, you're back! Pam opened her eyes and nearly jumped from the bed. What? Who? Oh! She looked down at her body. I'm big again. Well, bigger. She jumped out of bed and ran for the door. Hey, maybe you should put on some pants first. The Belle held out a pair for her. Pam ran down the stairs to see her mother. Belle was a few steps behind. I'm back. I'm good as new, I hope. Al looked at Pam and then he looked at his wife. Paula, wake up. Just a second. Pam went to the kitchen. Belle had made a whole jar of that This Just Might Work powder. It was sitting next to the mostly full coffee pot, which was cold. How much do I use? Belle grabbed the jar. This is witch stuff. Closely guarded secrets and all. She looked at Pam. 4 tablespoonfuls. Pam mixed the sugar, the cream, the powder, the cold coffee, and Belle grabbed the funnel, and they went to see about Paula. Al watched as Belle tipped his wife back in the chair, and his daughter shoved a funnel in her mouth. The coffee went in, and the chair was back on its runners. This shouldn't take two. Paula opened her eyes and looked around. Did it work? She looked at Pam. All better? There was more crying, only this time it was tears of joy. Al managed to stay mostly dry-eyed. Belle managed to stay well out of the way. Chapter 7. 2 days to go. Pam awoke to the sound of her cell phone making those cat noises again. She pulled the covers back and was overjoyed to see that she was still 17. She did all the morning things needed to do so she would look and maybe feel human, then went downstairs to see about going to school. Paula was in the kitchen. She'd made a sandwich for Pam to take as her form of breakfast. There was a bag full of things for her to eat. The coffee was in her cup, and there was a note pinned to her backpack for her teachers. It said, "Please excuse Pamela for her absentee yesterday. If you have any problems with this, too bad." Pam was glad her mom was mostly back to her old self again. Paula gave Pam a quick hug. "Try not to stay too long at the office tonight." She looked like she might try to kiss her cheek. "Dinner will be ready when you get here." Pam was on her way to the door when she remembered something or someone. What about Belle?" "Don't worry, Al can take her to the office. After all, he's working in the same building now. Go, you don't want to be late." Paula followed Pam to the door and then stood there watching as she got in her truck. Pam jumped in her truck and fired it up. As she was driving away, she kept thinking she'd never seen her mother so happy. Must be that this just might work powder. Then she got to thinking in just 2.5 weeks she was going to be an adult. Mrs. Grampus gave Pam a once-over when she walked in. The note was scrutinized and placed in a file. "I take it you didn't do anything paranormal or extraterrestrial while you were gone?" Well," Pam figured being turned into a child might just qualify as paranormal. "Never mind, I had a cheeseburger with real cheese on it last night, and I couldn't help but think about you. Thank you for straightening out that mess." Belle had spent the night in the guest bedroom, which was actually Pam's bedroom, but we've been over this too many times. She had wanted to get back to her lair, but the bogus family had insisted she stay. It was late, and she was getting tired of sleeping on that folding lawn chair. Being in an actual bed for a change was a relief. As she was finishing up all the early morning things young witches and women do, she noticed there was a hula hoop laying on the floor. That wasn't there earlier, or was it? Looking around the room to be sure nobody was watching, which, seeing as she was in a bedroom with the door closed, was kind of odd. "I used to know how to do this." She stepped into the hoop and was about to reach down and pick it up when the lights went out. Geek Pam was standing in her bedroom holding a really big remote control. She was hoping to see Pam for just a few seconds before running off to school. She'd hit the power button, followed by the location finder switch, and now there was a witch standing in her room. "Miss Belle!" I'm sorry, something went wrong. Meek Pam looked over to be sure the door was closed. I'll send you back to the office right away. Belle looked at what must be Pam Bogus, only she looked different somehow. Maybe it was her school uniform looking like it had just come from the cleaners, or her hair didn't look like a bird's nest. She was about to ask a question when the lights went out again. Al walked into the kitchen. Have you seen Belle? She's not in her room. Okay, we know it's not her room. No, maybe she decided to head back to the office. Paula was in the middle of cleaning all the dishes that were already clean. Maybe one of those goober drivers gave her a ride. Al looked at all the dishes stacked on every space in the kitchen. Are you feeling okay? Pam was on her way to her next class, hoping she hadn't missed some important instructions from yesterday. She quickly glanced at her cell phone just in case the world was about to end. There was a message from her dad. Her dad seldom sent her messages. This must be some kind of an emergency. Maybe mom had some new bizarre malady. She checked to be sure nobody was watching and opened the message. It said, did you give Belle a ride to the office? She wasn't in the house when I left. Pam thought about all the things that might have gone wrong from the time she got out of bed until now. No. She crossed her fingers. Al sent a next message. I'm at the office. No one has seen her, and her mom said she's not there either. He didn't like bothering Pam while she was at school, but what with all the weird things going on around here, he figured it was best to look into things as soon as they happened. Belle found herself standing in a bedroom, only it wasn't the one she'd been in just a few seconds ago. Now this is weird. She looked around the room. Well, there was a bed, a nightstand with a lamp, and a chair. And that was it. No closet, no dresser. When she spotted the window above the door, she had a sneaking suspicion that she was at the office, just not in her lair. Belle walked over to the door and then hesitated to open it. She turned the knob and pulled the door just enough so she could peek out through the crack. The hallway outside was empty. She stepped out with all the confidence of a newborn possum. There was a voice coming from the reception area. No, I haven't seen her. Maybe you should try calling the jail. It sounds like that weirdo Hildy, or was it Hilda? One of them was weird, and the other one was weird as well. Belle thought about it and came to the conclusion she wasn't in any trouble, so why not just walk over to the stairs and head down to her lair? If anything went wrong, she could always try her invisibility spell. Just as she was about to turn to the door to the stairs, the board under her foot creaked. Hildy looked over her shoulder at that weird witch from down in the cave. Oh, it's you. She turned back towards the desk and back to whoever was on the phone. Ever since my sister talked me into coming to work here, I've seen some really weird things. Belle stepped through the opening and quickly walked, almost ran, down the stairs. I guess that bridge to the second floor didn't work out. She kept going to the bottom. It was very dark down there, just the way Belle liked it. It seemed too dark somehow. Maybe the lights didn't work out either. The little man wasn't teaching his class today. Belle got to the door to her lair and opened it. Without hesitation, she nearly dove through the opening to her sanctuary. Belle heard the door open, and a witch came in without so much as a howdy. The witch looked like she was trying to look just like her. Same black knee-length dress, same orange and black striped stockings, same hot pink running shoes. Wait a minute. What are you doing dressing up trying to look like me? Belle stopped in her tracks. There was somebody standing next to her cauldron. It looked like this impostor had been messing with her things. Just what do you think you're doing in my lair? Your lair? Belle pulled a cell phone from one of her many pockets. She hit the call button and then held the phone to her ear. Mom, why didn't you tell me I had a twin sister? Pam had just enough time to get to class to make it halfway there. She did her fast walking, not running thing. She also tried to text her dad while she was walking. She managed to write, Dodd, not her. Call maybe Goober? Al looked at the text from Pam. He translated it in his head. Maybe she called a goober. Pam sent another text. Mom, hers not one after long night. Al read the text and translated it into English. Perhaps Belle went to see her mom after that long night at our house. He'd already told her he'd talked to Belle's mom, but Pam must be worried and forgot. Gotta go. Al sent her a text. Try not to worry about anything at the office. I'll look into things. Pam got to Mrs. Goblin's class only 3 minutes late. Mrs. Goblin gave her a scathing look, then remembered something she'd heard about the cheese crisis of 2 weeks ago and how this girl was almost someone else's problem. Just hold on for 2 more months, she whispered under her breath. The bell rang and Pam got up and walked out the hall without any idea what had happened in the last 52 minutes. She knew she was in class, but didn't have a test. Did they read from the textbooks? Was there an assignment to do for tomorrow? All she could think about was all the really bad things that might befall a witch. Pam quickly checked her phone for any more messages. Nothing new on the missing bag member. Worry got the better of her, and she ran for the exit. She was going to drive over to the office and find Belle if it was the last thing. Hey, no running in the hallway unless you're being chased by someone with a chainsaw. The hall monitor gave Pam a hard look. He quickly looked behind her for anyone that just might be chasing her. He knew all of the stories about this young lady. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. I was just, aren't you supposed to be in class? The bell rang, letting Pam know that she was now late for English class. It's just that I got turned around. I'm not sure which way I'm supposed to be heading. Pam tried for her best lost look teenager, which for her wasn't hard. The hall monitor took a step back. You're not sick, are you? He looked around for anybody else to hand this kid off to. Maybe you should go see the nurse. He was now standing several yards away. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I'll do that. Pam began walking towards the nurse's office. Nurse Shark looked in Pam's eyes and she took her temperature. She did the blood pressure thing. No, you don't seem to have anything. You said you're feeling sick, but no nausea or headache or stomach ache? Yes, ma'am. I feel sick. I think I need to go to the office. No, I mean home. Pam was now feeling very sick about lying to an adult, or lying to anyone for that matter. It wasn't really a lie. She was feeling sick, sick as to where Belle might be. As a matter of fact, she was feeling very sick, so she wasn't actually lying. That breakfast sandwich her mom had given her was acting like it wanted to come back up for a visit. Didn't that mean nausea? which was also sick? If you're that sick, I can't let you drive. Either you'll have to call one of your folks to come get you, or you'll just have to use one of the bunks here and rest for a while. The bunks were actually old used army cots left over from the 1960s. Some had evil looking stains on them, others were missing parts. Nurse Shark knew that the very sight of these bunks would make almost anyone want to return to class instead of getting too close to them. Pam handed the note from Nurse Shark to Mr. Bonnethead. He didn't even bother to look at it since the bell had already rung for the end of the class. If you leave right now, you might get to your next class on time. He watched as Pam disappeared out the door. Not gonna miss that one. He looked out at the next class. Was that out loud? Pam sat there holding her sandwich in one hand and her cell phone in the other. She stared at the screen, willing it to receive a message from her dad. Belle looked at Belle and wondered what was going on. Mom says I don't have a twin, or a sister for that matter. She looked at her twin and wondered, would her mom lie to her? Belle needed to sit down. Her lawn chair was missing. In its place was an old couch with mismatching cushions. You don't sleep on that thing, do you? Belle thought it would look far better as the main ingredient in a bonfire. Of course not. I have a room right next door. Belle thought about showing her twin, or this impostor, her bedroom for some unknown reason. She had taken over one of the old storerooms that nobody seemed in any hurry to put to a good use, or a bad one. Belle noticed there were two doors in the back of her lair. I think I might have an episode. Without thinking, she sat down on the nasty looking couch. I thought I was Belle Blizzard, witch extraordinaire. If you're her, then who am I? Belle felt a twinge of some unknown and unwanted feeling, something others had problems with, but not her. You know who you need to see? The former receptionist turned investigator named Pamela. She has been known to do some really weird things with electronics. You could say she's kind of a wizard or maybe a witch. An electronics witch. Belle didn't want any competition, especially from somebody younger than her, even if it was only by a few months. I saw way too much of her last night. She had been magically transformed into a 10-year-old and then back. Uh, Pam, Pamela should be here from school in just a few hours. Belle was thinking about what Pam had told her about there being another her and another Pam. She also thought about going to have a look for this other person named Pam when she had another thought. Wait a second. You used a cell phone to call your mom. I thought any electronic devices coming into this building would be fried by the magic radiating from its walls. Belle didn't have a cell phone. It was too much like admitting she was a normal person. But she did see that sign by the front door. Pamela did some fancy electronic stuff and she shielded our phones. She also put a computer in the coffee shop for the rest of the staff. Oh, I see. But she didn't. This Pam, is she kind of like a geek? Yes, and I think she might be crazy. Belle looked around to be sure she wasn't in the room. She told me something about meeting herself in the Mall of Doom. Her mom turned her into a 10-year-old, so she came running to me asking for some of that just might help powder. You had Eye of Newt in your pocket that you didn't realize was there, but she knew it was. Yes, how did you know? Belle patted the ugly cushion next to her. "Have a seat. This might take some time." Belle began to tell Belle all about what was going on. Paula went to the guest bedroom to check to be sure that Belle wasn't hiding under the bed or maybe in the bathroom. As she was looking in the closet, she remembered that Pam was using this bedroom and Belle had stayed in her, well, what would be Pam's old room, which was now the guest room. Maybe we should just call the guest room Pam's room. She went into the bathroom and out the other door into Pam's old room. The room was spotless, which kind of worried Paula. She's never this neat. She was about to look under the bed, still trying to find Belle. Oh, look, Pam has a hula hoop. Paula looked around to be sure she was alone. I haven't used one of these since I was a teen. She stepped into the circle. The lights went out. Pam kept looking at the clock, willing it to say it was time to go so she could. Math class seemed to last at least 3 hours, and gym was somewhere around 5. At long last, the final bell rang, and Pam grabbed her backpack and was out the door, heading for the office to find Belle. Traffic was worse than ever. People were going out of their way to keep Pam from reaching the office in less than. She looked at the clock on the dash. It had only taken her 15 minutes to get to the office. Pam ran to the new door, thinking it was time to come up with a name other than the new door. The little grave was right next to the path. She slowed down and kind of thought nice thoughts about poor dead animals. She saw the yard goat standing next to the path. It was eating some of the vegetables the Civil War soldiers had planted. Hey, you might not want to eat those. The boys might. The goat looked at Pam. Pam looked long and hard at the goat. It looked like the yard goat, only just a bit different. Pam took a step closer, followed by a second. Once she was close enough, Pam placed one hand on the goat's head. Her fingers went right through it. "Are you the ghost of the goat we buried here?" The goat looked at her and said, "Hey, can you tell me what killed you? Hey." Pam realized that she didn't speak goat. This got her to wondering why she understand the poultrygeist she'd encountered at Guy Golumpus's house. She'd talked to them, and they'd talked to her. Pam got to wondering how it was sometimes in her life things worked out the way they did, while other times things just didn't add up. She thought about how in just 2.5 weeks she just might become an adult, but this wasn't going to answer any of her questions. Thinking about her upcoming birthday, she wondered just how old Belle was, really. Oh, shoot, I forgot Belle. I gotta go. I'll be back and I'll ask you some more questions. Pam went through the new door and down the steps to the basement. Mrs. Oberhair was at her desk. That was now an actual desk. The wall was still just studs. Pam waved as she ran by, heading to Belle's lair. Once at the door, Pam rang the bell and then knocked on the old hard wood. When there was no answer, she pulled the door open and looked inside. The room was empty. Well, empty of people or witches. Feeling as if she were trespassing, Pam walked over to the bathroom door and knocked. Belle, are you in there?" No answer. There was no place else for the witch to be. Hildy did her best to at least act like she was concerned that Belle was missing. Maybe she went home to visit her folks, or maybe the hospital, or the jail. Hildy thought about it just long enough to show apprehension. She pulled the Rolodex over and flipped a few pages. She dialed the number and handed the handset to Pam. To speak to somebody in English, press 1 now, followed by, if you're calling from a rotary phone, please hang up and try back when you've come to grips with modern technology. Pam handed the handset back to Hildy. I better try this on my cell phone. She walked out the front door to her pickup. To speak to someone in English, press 1 now, followed by, if you're calling from a rotary phone, please hang up and try back when you've come to grips with modern technology. Pam pressed 1. After going through the first 21 numbers, she heard, to ask about a guest of the county lockup, press 22 now. Pam pressed the 2 button twice. County lockup, who do you wish to inquire about? The voice sounded bored. Howdy. I was just wondering if y'all might have somebody named Belle Blizzard visiting your fine establishment? The sound of typing on a keyboard came over the phone. Nope, no Blizzard Belle in our guest rooms. How about Tinkerbell Snowflake? Pam crossed her fingers, hoping Belle was there, while at the same time hoping she wasn't there. Then she got to wondering, if she hadn't been arrested, then she might be in the hospital, which just might be worse. More keyboard sounds came over the phone. Nope, no Snowflake Tinkerbell. Any other aliases she might be using? No, sir. Thanks a bunch. Pam hit end. She called the one and only hospital. To speak to somebody in English, press 1 now. Pam pressed 1. After talking to admitting she was still no closer to finding her friend, Pam searched for the next number. Her fingers were shaking as she hit the call button. It rang a few times and it was answered by an actual person. County morgue, you stab 'em, we slab 'em. Pam had to swallow hard before asking, have you gotten anyone in today dressed in a knee-length black dress with orange and black striped stockings and hot pink running shoes? Black dress, black stockings. This one had a stake driven through her heart. Some kind of a weird ritualistic murder. The medical examiner wanted to pull the stake, but some detective named Slot said to leave the stake in place. There was a long pause. Uh, you are with the police department, aren't you? Pam quickly channeled her world leader Pam. Pamela Bogus, anomalous investigations. Oh, yeah, you're with those people. Look, I think this is a dead vampire, but Mr. Smarty Pants, the doctor, says there's no such thing. What do you think? Pull the stake or leave it? Pam was about to go into the hole. You pin a vampire down with a stake so you can cut their head off, when she had a thought. I would say leave it in place just in case. Yeah, the really weird thing is, there's not a drop of blood anywhere, inside or out of this woman. After a brief silence, he continued, some reporter came by earlier asking about this stiff. All kinds of questions about who she was and where she was found. Weird looking guy. We thought he might have been one of yours. Pam ran all the things the staff was working on through her mind. Nobody was working on vampire case right now. What did he look like? Let's see. He had on a nasty looking crumpled straw hat with a red hat band. His suit was something out of the 70s, white with blue stripes, seersucker suit. He was wearing tennis shoes and he had a camera and a recorder slung over one shoulder. No, that's not one of ours. Pam nearly ended the call until she remembered why she'd called in the first place. Oh, sorry, do you have anyone there with green skin? You should have seen the mess they brought in last week. Green skin with yellow eyes. It looked like he had gills. The medical examiner said that this was caused by his being submerged in pickle juice, but I think it was some kind of a monster, like maybe a sea monster or something. No one or nothing today with green skin? Nope, just the usual things. Have you tried the hospital? Maybe she's not dead yet. The man was trying to be helpful. Pam thanked him for the information and the lack of the same, and she hung up and sat there wondering where could Belle possibly be. The lights came on and Paula looked around the room. It was very neat. Everything was put away. Paula was walking towards the door when she saw all of this electronic equipment. There were shelves and shelves full of all things electric. There was a soldering gun neatly put away next to a strange looking cell phone with three antennas sticking out of the top. Pam isn't into electronics, is she? Paula looked around the room some more. It looked like Pam's room, only wait a second, Pam is still in the guest room. Paula went through the bathroom and back into the guest room, being used by her daughter. The guest room looked like, well, a guest room. There was nothing that said a teenager lived in it. Paula opened the closet and found several old TV sets, a few dozen old radios, and an unknown number of remote controls. Everything was neatly sorted by size and shape. This is just plain weird. Paula headed downstairs, where at least she knew what was going on. She was still thinking about how confusing things were. Maybe this is a side effect of sitting on that cursed chair or drinking that weird potion. As she stepped into the dining room, the sound of a cabinet closing caught her attention. Paula froze in her tracks. There's someone in the kitchen. She grabbed the only weapon she could find, an umbrella, and went to confront the intruder. Freeze right there, you. Uh. Paula heard somebody walk up behind her. She turned from the stove and saw herself. Belle and Belle walked to the top of the stairs. They were about to go to the coffee shop library when Belle held out one hand. We shouldn't be seen together. The folks here might be confused, if not worried. One witch is okay, but several of us might be something like a coven. How do you want to handle this? I'll walk into the library where Pam has her desk. You count to 100 and then you follow. Anyone seeing you will just think I went back to get something. It sounded okay to Belle, all except that counting part. Why not just use my watch? Look for when a minute is up. Well, yeah, I guess you could do that. 1 minute, then come to the library. Pam's desk is in the far back corner. Belle watched her other self walk away. She checked her watch. She checked it a few more times until a minute had gone by. Acting as if nothing weird was going on, Belle walked out from the stairwell and around the corner to the coffee shop. Hildy saw Belle go walking by. Again. That's odd. Didn't she just go by? Must be getting worn out. I best get some coffee in me to wake back up. Hildy followed the witch into the library. Belle was halfway across the room before she realized that everyone was there. Well, all the staff had gathered in the library for some unknown yet vitally important reason. Well, all of them that were still in town and at the office. Hortense and Dolores were still at the competition trying to win that huge award. Mr. Armstrong had received a late night emergency phone call. He was now away investigating a tank that kept driving around without a crew at Fort Hood. Barbara was off doing ghost things in some other place other than the attic. Cassandra hadn't gotten back from Enchanted Rock yet. Hilda and Hildy had both seen their aunt off at the airport yesterday, and they both found a need for coffee just as Belle made it halfway across the room. Belle was sitting at Pam's desk that was actually a card table, trying to use her invisibility spell. The card table was visible from the bar, and so was she. Eddie looked from one Belle to the other. I didn't know you had a twin sister. Madame Dingus looked at the two witches. Do you think they'll both wind up working here? Pam was still sitting in her pickup, wondering what to do when her cell phone rang. Not her usual cell phone, but the fancy one that Geek Pam had given her. She dug it out of her backpack and hit the answer button. Pam, is that you? Of course it was. Nobody else had one of these trans-dimensional phones. If you're wondering where Belle got to, she's here with me. Oh, thank God. She's okay? Wait, how did she get there and how am I going to get her back? Geek Pam didn't want to think about how badly she had screwed up. I wanted to see if the transporter was working right and to see you for just a second to thank you for helping me through that spell as a 10-year-old. And so I opened a dimensional slit just big enough for the transportation ring. It's actually a hula hoop with a copper cord and an amp booster inside of it. And I slipped it into your room. All you had to do was step inside the circle and you'd be transported to my room. I was going to send you right back, only I got Belle instead. I thought she was my Belle, so I sent her to the extra bedroom at the office. I'd already put a transporter there last week. As soon as meek Pam paused to catch her breath, Pam said, I understood about a tenth of that. Can you send Belle back to the office? Geek Pam said, I only put a transportation ring in the office bedroom in my dimension. Send her back to the bedroom then? Meek Pam felt absolutely awful about her mix-up. I'll send her to your house right away. Pam and Geek Pam said a bunch of things that only twins would understand, and then they hung up. Guess I'd best head back home and get Belle. She drove out of the dirt yard and back to her house. Belle looked at her identical twin self. I really want to get back home, but she felt like saying more but couldn't. The other Belle looked back with misty eyes. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Sniff. It's like my sister I've never known I had is about to vanish forever. Her lower lip began to tremble. The waterworks began. Geek Pam stood up, about to lead the two witches to the bedroom where the transporter was waiting. She looked at all of the bag members, looking back at her. Eddie was able to say what everybody else was thinking. You built a transporter like the one in Star Trek here at the office? Gertrude Katzbox looked like her eyes were about to fall out of her head. Madame Dingus was just staring. Bill Palmerhouse was petting the prince as if he were trying to set him on fire. The prince was enjoying it. Yes? Well, no, actually, I built it at home in my bedroom and then I brought it to the office. Madame Dingus felt so sad because the two witches were both crying. You two look like you need some of Eddie's best. Maybe a triple espresso as well. Gertrude looked close to see if the tears would wash off any of the green paint. It didn't. After way too much attention and a few wet eyes, Geek Pam managed to get the two Bells into the bedroom that the yard goat used. She pulled a cell phone from her purse, seeing as she was wearing a dress, and waited for Belle to step inside the transporter. You are the Belle from the other Pam's dimension, right? Seeing the nod, she handed the cell phone over. This has been shielded against anything and everything in the office, and it's programmed to reach Belle here in this dimension. With a sad wave and a few more tears, Belle popped out of sight. Belle sniffed hard, trying to act like a big witch. Geek Pam pulled a remote from her purse and knelt down next to the hula hoop. Pushing one button, she stuck her arm into the circle. Pam was sitting on the bed in her old bedroom, waiting. Suddenly, Belle just appeared inside a plastic ring. She looked miserable. I feel like I just lost my sister. She looked at the cell phone in her hand. Without hesitating, she punched the power button. As it rang, she held it to her ear. Belle, man, was that weird. She began talking to her other self as if she hadn't seen her in years. Pam didn't want to intrude, so she just sat there looking at the floor. A black square appeared right next to the hula hoop. It expanded into a rectangle. A hand appeared coming from the rectangle. It grabbed the hula hoop and then pulled it back into the rectangle, which then vanished. Had Pam not known what was going on, she would have thought she was seeing things. Geek Pam took the transporter back to her world, I guess. Geek Pam pulled the wiring from the transporter controller. She knew giving the chances somebody, maybe several someones, actually everybody at the office, was going to try using it, and they were going to make a bigger mess than the one that she had just sorted out. Oh, look at the time. I'd best get home. Mom hates it when I get home after 5. Geek Pam headed for the parking lot. Her Aunt Donna had acquired an old pickup that she didn't want. When her Aunt Felicity had called Sylvia to see if she could buy some dynamite, since the ATF was keeping an eye on her ever since she had blown up that grain silo trying to launch it into outer space, she couldn't get the supplies needed for her space program. Sylvia suggested that she try contacting Donna since she had better connections with those kind of things. Donna had just traded away most of her pyrotechnical stuff, but she knew somebody who knew someone. Donna was back with Sheriff something or other, so she couldn't break the law anymore. Well, at least not get caught. She still was paranoid, and she had a truck that she didn't need or want. Donna asked Felicity if she knew anybody that could fix electronics without asking any questions. Sylvia suggested that she talk to Pamela, Paula's kid. Donna called Paula in hopes of getting her cell phone programmed so she could make calls without being tracked by those people. Paula arranged for Pam to do all the things needed doing to the phone. Herbert something or other had followed and picked up Donna, and the two of them had headed back home. This all led to Geek Pam now having her own pickup truck, slightly used. Geek Pam got in and drove back home. She was glad that her transporter hadn't led to any more problems. Pam went back downstairs along with Belle, who was still talking to her other self. Pam glanced in the kitchen, wondering where her mother might be. Must be out looking for new used furniture. I hope she doesn't pick up any more cursed furniture. The two headed back to the office so Belle could get back to whatever it was she'd been doing that day. As Pam was driving, Belle had a thought. Do you suppose I just might be able to have them build a storeroom next to my lair? I'm kind of tired of sleeping on that lawn chair. Pam scratched her head. There's a storeroom next door to you? Not in this dimension, so I thought I could get Mr. Carbuncle to build one, which I'll then convert into a bedroom. Or why not just have him build a bedroom in the first place? Ah, that would be too normal. I don't want to tell folks I have a normal bedroom. I'd much rather say I have a storeroom that I'm using as a bedroom. Okay. Pam thought just maybe Belle was making her own life just a bit too complicated. Geek Pam walked into the dining room. Paula was sitting at the table talking to someone. The other person was in the kitchen, which was odd because the kitchen was her mom's domain. No one was allowed in there without her supervision. Paula looked over at Pam. Oh, Pam looks so nice in a dress and high heels. I wish my kid would dress up more. Geek Pam stopped in her tracks. She stared at her mother. Paula stuck her head from around the corner. Oh, good, you're home. You need to send Paula back to her own dimension. And that is a horrible place, but I'm going to stop right there until next week. Don't don't worry, Pamela Bogus and all the weirdos at the Bogus Anomalous group will be back next week with an even more confusing adventure or misadventure. Till next week, this is Chris James for Story Time.